Welcome to the Talk and Chatter experience powered by Gasoline Alley Harley Davidson, Pirelli Motorcycle Tyres Australia and TCX Boots. Amy King, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No worries at all. Who's Amy King?
Good question. She's a motorcycling enthusiast. Absolutely loves it. She's a wife. She's a mother. She's fearless. She's unapologetically herself. Yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
How's it being a mother and a motorcyclist? That's two big things. How is it?
Super tough. Yeah. I think, kids was always something that I wanted. And I didn't really think too much about the transition from having kids, pre-baby, having the baby, and coming back. I think it really changes your mindset. And I think for me, and just recently finding out this, was going from a race meeting without my son and then going to a race meeting with my son are two completely different things. It's a really hard concept to change from like racer to mum and back and forth. It's a pretty tough transition.
Yeah, I reckon it would be. I reckon it just, like that time in between races, what do you do on a normal schedule that you've done for the past whatever years you've been racing to now the new schedule in those other times? I guess that must be a big transition in itself.
Nappies in between.
Yeah.
Yeah. I must admit, the days where he's not there, I miss him absolutely. It's definitely not as exciting having him there, and he loves being there. It's just, it is such a hard thing to kind of go from coming back and being a racer in the pit and then returning and doing the nappies and doing the bottles and making sure that he's okay, to then flick a switch and head back out and get back into race mode. It's definitely easier when he's not there for sure. Like Bathurst and prepping before the meeting and not having him there on the road trip, getting there, not having to worry about anyone else but myself and race, it was definitely, for me, it was a big eye-opener to see the possibilities without him there of how much better the racing could be compared to what it is, say, at a Brisbane club day when you're running around and it's chaos. It's just a different kind. I mean, I do absolutely love both, but it's just a different kind.
That's a really honest answer.
I love him to bits.
Yeah.
When he's old enough to listen to this, he's like, oh, Mum didn't want me.
Yeah. Because that is a real honest answer. And I guess that's what it is,
Yeah.
And is that the longest? Because you're away for, 5 days at that point? Is that the longest time you've been away to?
Yeah, longest.
So you got that sort of battle as well, I guess, too.
Yeah. It's definitely a head and a heart situation, I was lucky Dean's parents adore him and they had him all weekend and I was getting regular updates and regular phone calls and FaceTimes and things like that. But, yeah, it's definitely it's tough when you're away for that long. Yeah. And then sort of day 3 when he's starting to ask for mum and you're still out there racing, you do get that guilt. Yeah. But, he'll look back on this and he'll be like, shit, yeah, my mum was rad. She used to race, you know what I mean? So
for sure.
It's cool. It's cool.
You're on TV on Saturday.
Really?
Yeah.
Why? On this Saturday or
no,
already
Saturday.
been?
Yeah.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, you're on Blokes World on Saturday, actually, because they were down there filming it, and I was watching just a couple of little clips go through, and you're on the coverage a little bit for that as well. So
there you go.
Get that, and you can see that in how many years he wants to watch Mum. So tell me where it started for racing.
It was a slow burn for me. My brother and my dad used to race and ride growing up, and admittedly, I sort of got on a bike, didn't really love it, didn't really do it. Did gymnastics for about 8 years, competitively. And then it sort of came time where I'd had an injury, not through racing or anything. It was just on a slip and slide at Grafton Ski Lodge. And I'd broke my wrist and did it pretty badly. And I sort of fell out of the stage of competing that I'd wanted to do and that I'd worked towards in gymnastics, and that sort of frustrated me a little bit. So it came time for my brother to step up to seniors, and my dad sort of said to me, "Radio, get your stuff, we're going down to the track and you're going to learn how to ride." So it was a love from there. We had a really good bunch of a few of the girls, same situation, their brothers were stepping up to seniors and they were sort of stepping into the 85s, and we had about 4 of us, and it was a really cool crew, and it just kind of stemmed from there.
Just one day at a time, basically. Now, Coffs Harbour, Grafton local, that sort of thing growing up, is that correct the whole time?
Coffs Harbour local, yeah.
What was it like being a kid growing up in that area? Because everyone at the moment wants to move to Coffs Harbour. It's been such a popular place over the last decade. What was it like growing up as a kid down there?
It was cool. Yeah. It was really cool. Just, you had so much riding opportunity close by. For us up here, it's kind of like, your closest track might be an hour away or an hour and a half. Yep. For us down there, especially my husband growing up, the ability for him to just get on a bike and leave his backyard, go a couple of kilometres down the road and be in the best state forest in Australia, that was pretty surreal. So yep. I didn't so much get into the bush riding, but just having the 2 tracks there and my dad being sort of president of the club and that sort of thing down there gave me an ability to do a lot of riding yep. In comparison to up here, for sure.
And was it talent from the start or was it a lot of hard work?
Oh, God, no. No. There was, my dad has this one really good picture of me on an 85 flipping off the grid.
Wow.
And I don't think my starts have improved much from then. It's a lot of hard work. It was a lot of grit, a lot of accidents, a lot of injuries, most of them on a postie bike, not a 450. But, it definitely wasn't a natural thing. It was progression and sticking at it, I think, for sure.
What was one of the big memories of being a kid racing bikes?
Biggest memory would be not so much dirt track, which is where we are now, sort of where we've landed. It would more be motocross. My brother used to race the 5-way series, it was called back then, and it was sort of Ballina, Port Macquarie, Grafton, Coffs, Kyogle, Inverell. There was an array of different tracks. It was just camping with the families. It's such a family-orientated sport, and that was what I fell in love with. Yeah. It's
pretty cool, hey? And those locations, you've got some good people amongst all those different parts of the world too, to camp with and be part of.
Yeah.
Good tracks.
They are good tracks.
Did you ever ride, obviously you didn't do Ballina dirt track, but did you ever do Ballina motocross? Did you have a go there or anything?
Not Ballina from memory. No, I didn't really do too much motocross.
Yep. Those jumps get in the way of good riding, don't they?
Yeah. Jumps are not for me. I'm a land to keep me on the ground. I'm not interested in the jumps. My brother, by the time he sort of stepped into seniors, his seniors was pretty short and brief, just with injuries and things like that. So by the time he sort of jumped into seniors and we were starting to do a bit of motocross, it was cut pretty short. And for me, dirt track was just my interest and my comfortable, I guess. I was better at it, so I preferred it. And that was just sort of where it went.
Wow. What a story. That's because it goes so fast too, doesn't it? From those first few times now to sit here after all these years and race something like Bathurst long track the other week and things like that. It goes quick, eh?
Yeah. To think that I started in, 2009? That's a long time ago.
Yeah, it goes really fast. What was the bikes back then? What were you riding?
I was on a KTM 85 for quite a brief moment.
Yep.
I then went to a Honda CRF 250. It was an absolute lemon. I think Dad had that thing in the workshop more than it was ridden.
Oh, really? Yep.
I then was past the most horrific bike I'd ever ridden in my racing career, and that was Dad's Husky TE 310. It was a road registered bike, and it was just, you could imagine trying to throw that thing around on a dirt track. It was like chaos.
Yeah, it would have been crazy.
Yeah. So I can still remember the first time I saw Dean at a racetrack, my hubby. He came over and said, "Can I do a few things to your bike? Because this ain't pretty. This isn't going to end well." And he's like, "You're trying to ride the wheels off this thing and it's just going to toss you to the curb." So he made a few adjustments. But yeah, it wasn't long after that I actually purchased his 250 off him and went to Honda, and then, went from there.
What did the TE 310 teach you? Don't take that on the track. No. Do you remember teaching you anything or anything like that?
Yeah, it definitely taught me a lot of things. It taught me a lot of throttle control, because obviously it was a lot bigger than any bike that I'd ridden previously. And it just taught me a lot about the importance of bike setup, because the difference that you can make in a few small changes on a bike that was definitely not suited to that kind of track, and then going to a bike that is more suited to that kind of track, seeing the difference was incredible. Yeah.
It makes sense. And I was obviously took my EXE down to Coffs earlier in the year. So it is the modern TE. You know what I mean? Like, it's an enduro version of the bikes. And I had Jared's dad, Andrew, say, mate, we've got to change a few things. And I wasn't riding it faster by any means, but gee, it made it a lot more usable to ride,
rideable.
you know? Like, but going from Coffs and then going up into the mountains riding it, like it's said for an enduro, it wouldn't have been any good at that. Not any good, but it wouldn't have been as good doing that afterwards. Really cool, hey? Like, everything's purpose-built for a reason, you know? It's not just to sell you more bikes. There's actually a reason why there's a FS, FE, you know, in the Husqvarna range or whatever. So it's pretty cool.
It is cool.
What's the, what was the 50? What was wrong with the 50? What was wrong with the CRF, sorry?
The CRF? I don't know. It just
no
was a lemon. We just had one bike, and it didn't deter us from Hondas or anything like that. We stuck with Hondas for a very long time before switching to KTM. It was an 08 Honda 250, and it just was a lemon. Just everything about it. We'd rebuild it, get a couple of hours out of it, it'd blow again. You know, I don't know what it was, but it just went all the time.
Wow, that's a shame. They were a great shape too. Like, that was a real cool shape, and I know for the 450 version, that was the one that people
absolutely
want still now.
Still now.
Because it's the Carby one.
You talk to Mick Booth.
Really?
He'll tell you his 08.
It's the bike.
It was the bike, absolutely.
The 09, everyone's like, steer away from that one a little bit. But 08 CRF 450 in that era was the bike to have for a long time. That's cool.
Definitely.
Now, did your dad get his 310 back, or did you have to ride that forever and then, I don't like it, I'm going to sell it? Or what happened there?
No. Dad gave me the 310 because he hated it. So he went and bought himself an EXC. And I think he kind of realised, like, this is sending her backwards. So he helped me purchase Dino's bike. And then the 310 was on its way. It went to a new owner, and I'm sure they loved it. Just wasn't for me.
It didn't suit the purpose. What's the now you're saying about Dean? Dean's your husband, which you've said a fair few times here. You met him back then, right?
Yeah.
Did you guys, were you friends back then, or did he just come up randomly and say, can I help you fix your bike? Like, what happened then?
We met on a night out through a mutual friend.
Right.
And just met out, as you do in Coffs. There wasn't really much to do. You go out town when you're 18. And when I saw him at the track that day that he was asking to change a few things, that was the first time that I'd seen him outside of, like, that situation. So I didn't realise at the time that he was really into dirt track. I didn't know who he was. So, I just saw him there and he helped out, and then it was kind of just went from there, I guess.
That's funny how that works, eh?
Yeah.
Because I was like, is it the first chance encounter that it's like, I've got to go and help your suspension? Or say you already met, sort of thing. Where was the place to go in Coffs of a night time? What was Coffs Harbour like of a night time when she turned 18?
Oh, back when I was 18, it was the Coffs Hotel.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it sort of switched between the Coffs and the Plano. The Coffs was the place to be, and then it shuffled to the Plano, and I couldn't tell you where it is now. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
It's crazy. We used to do a bit of dirt track, and they had supermoto on that in Coffs. And it sounds funny now, but that ex-services club place used to be the place to go.
Off.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. Like, and this is like early 2000s. You know that big place, the bowls and that?
Yeah.
It was the place to go at that time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so there's a live band at the Hoey Moe.
Yeah.
Right? And that was okay.
Hoey Moe's great for like a Sunday sesh.
Fantastic spot.
Great.
And then, the Coffs Services, or whatever it's called, was the place to go of a Saturday night when you're down there, or Sunday night or whatever. So, a little bit of Coffs trivia for you. What about, so tell me about racing. Were you in Coffs mostly, or did you start to get out of that landscape, or once dirt track started to kick in, what did you do? Yeah,
so Coffs would have started, I guess around 2009. Met Dean in 2011.
Yep.
That was sort of when we started taking things a little bit more seriously in racing. My dad didn't know anything about suspension, bike setup. It was just kind of like however it came from the shop was how you rode a bike. So my big turning point in my career would have been when I met Dean, because he was sort of that person for me that knew about bike setup and that sort of thing. So I think it would have been I'm really not good with dates, but probably like 2013, 13, we had these two girls, the Sipple sisters, come over from Tamworth. And to be quite honest, growing up, I just thought that this dirt track was stumbled upon. They had vacant land and they just cut in a track. I didn't realise that it was an actual discipline or a thing. So for me, I was just kind of in my Coffs bubble. And then these girls came over from Tamworth and they had their fancy Australian Kevlars on, and I was like, wow, these chicks look legit. And went out and I was absolutely shitting myself. And I went out and I ended up beating them, and they came over and they were chatting and they were like, where are you from? What have you done? Like, you've been doing this for years. And it was kind of then that there was, this opportunity and opened up that this is something bigger than just this small Coffs track. So it was sort of from there where we got together a little bit of a crew, and we had us, the Bullens, the Hearsts, and we just started travelling. Yep. And Coffs, honestly, is the best location for dirt track. Like, between Taree, Kempsey, Gunnedah oil tracks, and then Tamworth, Newcastle and Brizzy is sort of right in the centre, and we had this like hub of so many tracks. It was pretty cool. So there was probably a good 6 years that there wasn't many weekends that we weren't racing.
That's so damn cool, eh?
Yeah. Kind of just went from there.
And just travelling and travelling and travelling.
Yeah. I think one year, I'm not really sure what year, it would have been maybe 2015. We did like 26 weeks straight, and then had 4 weeks off, and then went like another 15 weeks of racing. So that's a lot of dollars spent. That was before we had a house and kids.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that sort of changes things. Tell me this, do you remember entering races previously to riding it?
Yeah.
Like you had to post your sub regs in or bank check and that?
Yeah.
Well, I know everyone whinges about riding it now, right? But gee, it's got easy.
Yeah. Entries used to cut off and you'd panic and think, shit, did my postal make it?
Absolutely. You're like constantly checking, registered mail. I got to get a bank check, because it was always bank check. Yeah. Because you wouldn't want to hand out a card. Now everything's just so easy. Yeah. So that's weird, isn't it? Because I was thinking to myself, I'm thinking, if you're racing 30 meetings a year in 2014, you're just at the post office every week.
Licking stamps every week. Just send it express.
It's one of those, I wonder how many people think of that though, like, about that type of thing.
Probably not many.
Nah, because it was such a full-on time. Like, I remember just the sup regs to come out, and you'd read it so detailed. Yeah. Now it's like,
I don't even own a printer. You used to have to print them out, sign them, send them. Yeah.
And then it made it a bit easier when the scanning. You could scan them and send them back. And, but I always remember having to go to the post office to get the bank check and that. And
I didn't really think too much about that.
It's torture. Torture.
Times have changed.
Yeah, absolutely. So what tracks? Obviously you said about all those tracks, but what are some of the good ones and fond memories and some things like that?
God, fond memories. One of them would have to be Taree. Taree for me, winning the last Troy Bayless Classic was epic. That event, having a full grid of females always, because that was sort of our condition of being able to enter or being able to hold the class, was having a full grid, which makes sense. It's a prestigious event. Just the night racing that you could do. That for me was cool. And then probably Coffs by far layout-wise is my favourite track, just because it's probably one of the only tracks in Australia that has a traditional right-hander. Like, it's not just sort of like a boop in, boop out kind of situation. It's like a full-blown right-hander, which you probably don't really see often. So that would be the best layout. And then atmosphere, I'd probably say Brizzy. Like the atmosphere at Brizzy and the number of riders and that sort of thing when we first came up to Brizzy was pretty cool.
I think to look at it and to add on to that, as a club, Brizzy. Yeah. It's just such a good group, big group of members. Yeah. And if you look at it as like a full club, the facilities, the people, it's a good atmosphere.
Yeah.
You sit up there and watch a race, it's a fantastic place to be.
Yeah.
2019, Bayless Classic, that was the last one, wasn't it?
Yeah, 2019 or 2017.
Is it 17?
Maybe. I think it might have been 17.
17 was it? Yeah.
I think.
I don't know.
Again,
I can't quite remember. I know it's a long time ago now. Tell me about that event. Tell me about Troy Bayless Classic. What happens? You enter?
enter.
You speak to Troy to enter? Like, who was organising, like you said to me, about the full grid of girls to get it? Because I know, like, say, a Bathurst event or something,
Yeah.
you're all talking to each other to try and make sure it's a full grid. Was it like that at that time, do you know?
Starting out, I never knew about oil. I didn't, the Bayless Classic was the first event that I tried oil, and I tried it on my good friend Georgia Murray's Kawasaki.
Oh, yeah.
First and last time I'll ride a Kawasaki.
Oh, jeez.
It wasn't my thing.
Sorry, I got to interrupt.
No, you're right.
Huon, if you're listening.
I know, he loves them too. Oh, no, I rode a KX 500 the other day. Loved it. I take it back.
Yeah, but those KDXs and that, they're just horrendous. Sorry, Huon.
Yeah.
I'll let you go.
So that event was the first event I did, and at the time I think Jess Shepherd was the female organising that. She was sort of the female, she was from Brizzy, taking the lead on numbers and always pushing to get girls and draw girls into the sport. She fell out of the sport, not really sure when, but when that sort of happened and that transition, I was the one sort of 15, 16, 17 organising the girls grid for the Bayless, which is not an easy task, trying to coordinate 12 women and bikes and borrow and beg and steal. Like, it's tough, but we got there every year. Every year we were on that grid, so that's the main thing.
What a not what a show, but somewhat what a show that was for dirt track, eh?
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
It was huge.
Yeah.
Just the crowds that they would draw and like the interest and passion and like there wasn't many events like that where, you could turn up and have that sort of presence and like the pits, it was euphoric, like running around and you're pitted beside the likes of, Christopher Mullen and Kirkness and Richards and like there was some really insane names there.
Yeah.
Like, and you were just like everyone else.
I think that was one of the secret recipes to the event was that it was, there was, Vermeulen, then you had all the Americans that came across as well. But it was like just everyone was just there to go racing bikes. And, the most passionate is Troy. Yeah. Like, the one that wants to win it as well, that's Troy. And he, just built this really good foundation with his crew and put on a mad event. That team put on hard to beat that event. Like even like you look at your, MotoGPs and some of the other, good events we have in Australia, like the feel of that one and the crowd and everything. Tell you what, it's pretty hard to pass.
Yeah, definitely.
And so when you first rode on oil, was that the first year of the Bayless Classic?
Yeah, that was the first time I rode on oil. I don't know. Oh, it probably wasn't the first year of Bayless.
Never ridden on oil?
No, never.
Okay, that's a weird feeling. What was it like?
It was opening, like an eye-opener, going from being really competitive in dirt track and then jumping on oil and just having absolutely no idea what to do. Yep. I think I finished like 10th out of 12. Like it was bad. Yeah.
So I'm guessing 17s at that time as well.
Yeah, 17. Yeah, that's the only thing that I really loved was the 17. Like the height of the bike, it felt like I could wrangle it a bit more. Yep. That was the cool thing about it.
Yep.
And for me now, after like riding oil and getting experience, I actually kind of preference it over dirt, to be honest. Yep. Yeah.
Oh, that's weird.
Just love not getting roosted.
It's good for your bikes too.
Yeah.
Like you're not getting sandblasted every time, Yeah. So, yeah. And that roost, it's brutal.
That roost, especially in the boys' 450s, like draws blood.
Really?
Yeah. We went to Bathurst one year and I'd like split open my face, the end of my nose. Like it is brutal.
At the speed of Bathurst, right? What, the roost must be crazy when you're behind someone, hey?
Mm-hmm.
Like more than obviously you get it, final corner at North Brizzy or something like that, you get a fair bit.
Yeah.
But someone like Bathurst where you're going for a long time down a straight behind, that must be pretty brutal, yeah?
Yeah. It's like a wall, honestly. Like if you, like Bathurst just recently, if you got in someone's roost,
yep,
it was honestly like you could physically feel the bike slow down. Like that's how strong the roost is, yeah. Like you want to get out of it really quickly because it's not fun.
So there's no idea of wanting to slipstream. I just want to get out of this damn thing. Yep.
Yeah. And it is like you almost like cross into the roost line and you're like, like get out of that real quick, like try to cross through it to make sure that you're not sitting behind it.
Oh, that's brutal. Yeah, because it was fast, eh? Like genuinely fast. We'll get to Bathurst and long track. So deco, like decomposed granite or gravel, whatever you're going to call it, that was the primary thing growing up though from sort of thing. Yep.
Yep.
And what was the best one of those tracks? Was it Coffs because of that right hand? It was?
Yeah. I don't mean to be biased. I mean, it is my home track. But yeah, absolutely. It's best open layout.
Yep.
Open layout, yeah.
Do you know Dean Webster? Do you know the name?
No.
He was up here. We went to roll racing the other night. He's a friend of mine I grew up with. So Dean, Jess Shepherd and I all grew up in Ballina.
Oh, there you go. So you would know Jess Shepherd
all the same.
well.
We went to school together, the three of us, right?
Yeah, right.
And he took his kids down on Sunday to the RPA day at Coffs, and we're talking about it. And he didn't really realise it was a junior much, and I'd only ridden that track in January. And we're talking about how hard that right-hand corner is, that you just said how good it is, because it's just... It is something so foreign, you know, but it's so good, eh? Yeah. Because it's got that real weird feel that you come into and then it just throws you wide to set you into that next left sort of thing. It's a nice feel, that track.
And Coffs does really separate a lot of riders because, like, you go to the likes of, say, Curry or North Brizzy, there really isn't. It's kind of like a scoot in, scoot out situation. It's not really a turn as such.
Yes.
So when you go to Coffs, everyone's a bit like, oh, what do I do with this?
So,
I'm used to turning right.
So when you get that right-hand corner, are you braking at all, or are you trying to go sideways as possible out of the other one to set yourself into the right, or
trying to go deep into the right-hander to set yourself up to be on the outside for that next turn to then like scoot in? Yeah.
It's weird because it gives you that feel that it wants to push you out.
Yeah.
The wrong spot for that next turn, hey?
Yeah, and if you don't head in deep enough into that right turn and you like sort of scoot along the inside of the track, then you're sitting on the wrong side for the entry of the next corner.
That's right.
So it's very much so like a flow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool track. Cool track for a flow, like a flow track where you got to try and link it all up.
Yeah.
Do you ever get coaching? Did you ever get any coaching throughout the years or anything like that?
Not really, no. I'd say my biggest coach was probably, as we got more competitive, probably Andrew and Dean. I mean, as much as, you know, he sort of helped me through a lot. I didn't really have a coach or invest in coaching. It's probably something that hindsight I should have.
Okay.
But, yeah, I'd say they were sort of my biggest influences. Growing up, I always tried to not be scared of the boys and always try to race with the boys. And I think for any women out there starting out, like, it seems daunting and scary, but they're more in control than most of the females that you'll race anyway. So to go and race with them gives you a lot of skills that you probably won't get if you just stick with the girls.
Yep.
I feel like the girls can sort of get to a point and then they become stagnant, whereas the boys are forever evolving and getting faster and faster. So for me, when I first started out, we used to race. They would combine the women's class with the pre-1980 bikes or whatever they are. So Phil Crow was a massive influence for me. He used to come screaming and yahooing and hooting down the track on the inside, outside, and everywhere in between with me. And it was one of the things that if I hadn't have had that at the beginning of my racing, I probably wouldn't have got as far as I did, because that sort of gave me racecraft and gave me like the no fear kind of situation of having people around me and not being worried about it and just being able to do my own thing. So that was cool. And I mean, it did help that I was on a modern bike and I would always get the whole shot. Yeah. And then he'd have to chase me down.
He'd have to work for it as well. It was one of the questions I was going to ask, is where your racecraft's developed from, and Phil's obviously a big part of that. And it's a huge thing to have someone sort of sitting on your back guard or then in front of you, and that it's a big thing, isn't it? Like and just have them just sitting there and pushing you along, and I guess getting that awareness that just because they're there doesn't mean they're going to hit you. Yeah, that's a weird thing when you don't race or anything. You go for say an enduro ride and someone's sitting on your back guard, you're like, what are they doing? Like, it's like you're driving your car at that point, you know. So so Phil, big influence. Yeah,
massive.
Big at the Coffs Club, hey?
Yeah. He's been involved in it for so long, sort of in and out. But yeah, a long time. Yeah.
And what about the setup and that all come from Dean pretty much?
Yeah, mostly.
Dean and yourself just working, chipping away at it?
Yeah.
Do you feel you've got a good setup now?
Yeah. So previously it was kind of invest in the engine. Now in these last sort of few years, it's been let's invest in setup, let's invest in suspension. We've finally, after so many years, lowered my bike 50 mil.
Yep.
Moto Lab got us sorted out with some suspension, and it's been phenomenal. Like I can't believe the difference that it's made with the bike, and just confidence for me being a shorter rider.
Yep.
Having that ability to get my steel shoe down and do that sort of thing, like that's been massive. I wish we invested in suspension sooner.
So you'd never had it shorter the whole time?
Never had it lowered.
Yep. It's made that much of a difference?
Yeah.
Yep. Wow. That's, who would have thought? Like, I know suspension is everything, but, 50 mil, that's a long drop too,
Yeah.
So.
And that's just tried and testing, and we lowered it. I think we lowered it about 30 mil to start off with, and then we were like, let's go that little bit further and just see, because obviously they are built and designed the way that they are, with everything in mind. So once you lower and you're changing things, it does change the dynamic of the bike. So there is a fine line between going too far or not, but the 50 mil seems to work for us.
Because you look at any of the Euro flat track bikes or anything, they're all low, like they're all strung out, like quite long, but lowered out, like really low, So obviously it works on what they're doing. So that's interesting. Now, the Bayless, we'll go back to the Bayless Classic a little bit more. You did there was 3 years of that?
Yep.
So the first year you get 10th.
Yep.
Did you do much oil in between? Did you ride George's the first year was the George's?
Yeah, the first year I did on George's,
Okay.
Went and bought a set of rims. I'm pretty sure we sourced a set of secondhand rims that night for my Honda.
Oh, no. Really?
So it was like, all right, we're going deep. Yep. Like this is cool.
Yep.
Yeah. And it was more ride time. It was another track close by. Like Kempsey's only, an hour from Coffs.
Yep.
Taree, an hour and a half. Gunnedah is a bit further, but it was just more riding for us. So we sourced a set of rims that night. And we were off to the track not long after that. Yeah.
Well, once you've opened the eyes up to oil track, like you obviously love Coffs as a track, but what's the oil track that you go to and go, wow, is it Gunnedah?
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people say that, hey?
Gunnedah's cool.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kempsey track layout on a good day where the track is prepped and there's no braking bumps.
Yep.
Absolutely any day I'd take Kempsey. But Gunnedah just seems to be the track that is more smooth.
Yep.
More frequently.
Just such a good surface.
Yeah.
It's well prepped and everything.
Yeah.
Because coming down into Kempsey in that sort of first corner, the braking bumps and that's pretty gnarly.
Yeah, they do. They get pretty savage.
Which it should do too. There's all that grip going downhill and everyone's braking and it makes sense. But, and oil, are you better, is that gotten better and better and better refined, or after that first time did it just click?
No. Oil I always found tough because I'm not a great gator.
Okay.
So for me it was kind of like the chase is tougher because it's more one-lined and I'm not an aggressive rider. So for me, I couldn't just throw it in and punt someone and get underneath them, and that just wasn't me. So I was a bit more like I'd tiptoe around it for a few laps, and being such a short race, sort of like 4 or 5 laps, it's, whereas dirt, there was just a lot more opportunity racing line-wise to overtake and manoeuvre. So oil was a bit of a challenge for me at the start.
Yeah.
It sort of then became a preference. I just feel like I was more of a smoother rider.
Yep.
So the oil track suited me a little bit more than the dirt.
Yeah. Let's talk throttle control. How does that come?
Massive.
Yeah. How do you get to that?
Just practice.
Yeah.
Practice. I mean, the 250, as much as I sort of jumped off that pretty quickly, you had to learn it on a 450. Going from the 250 where you could just do whatever you wanted whenever you wanted and nothing really happened, and then jumping onto a 450 where you've got all that power, sort of at your fingertips was a big adjustment.
Yes. Yeah, it's a big jump.
You did learn pretty quick. about throttle control.
Because the bike weights now are pretty damn close.
Yeah.
There ain't much in that.
Not
it's just
really.
a whole lot more horsepower.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So it had to come, just had to build up.
Yeah.
Because it seems to be the thing that separates every single rider so much as the throttle, hey?
Yeah.
You know?
Throttle control, and I mean like corner speed, like the ability to come in harder and get on the gas earlier, obviously. And the throttle control comes with the fact that if you can come harder into a turn and maintain more speed, you're not cracking on the throttle as much on the way out.
Yep.
So you're not getting that sort of whiskey throttle situation. So it's kind of trying to piece that whole thing together for a smooth turn.
It's such a weird game, because it's a game. Like really, it's some sort of game, and it's such a weird game. When I was talking to Harry about it, about Coffs in particular, and there's a few of, like you as a group of fast riders there, that last corner coming on, how much, I don't know, and I was saying to Harry, was the trust in that front end.
Yeah.
I just don't see how you get to that point of having so much trust. On oil, I get it, because there's grip traditionally through the way, but you're just like, I don't know, in a car you call it understeering. Yeah. Because you're going across the track, but you're still in control. Yeah. And then the throttle's getting picked up and you're driving out. But being able to watch it on track and be behind it, I'm like, I just don't see how that works. Yeah. Like, I get it, but it's unbelievable. Yeah. Trust.
I mean, that's where the steel shoe comes in handy.
Really?
Yeah. So that steel shoe, I mean, essentially it becomes a third wheel. So when you're tipping it in and the front's giving way, that steel shoe is like, that's what you're relying on there.
So that steel shoe's, like, that shoe is helping you so much.
Yeah, helping you keep that front end up. Like helping you from tucking that front end for sure.
Was that a game changer when you went to that?
It wasn't until we lowered the bike, because to be honest, I had a steel shoe just for looks for a while. I don't think it really touched the ground much, no.
Damn. Yeah. So you honestly, you were like, had trouble touching and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. I still use blocks with 50 mil lowered and a whole shot button.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I can just tiptoe, but it's like slightly off balance. And if I take off slightly off balance, you know what happens when you get out of the gate, you're going to instantly go to whatever side you're leaning on.
Yep.
So for us, it's just safer to have the 2 blocks there. But yeah, 2 blocks, button in, and I'm still, So quite short, quite vertically challenged.
You would have had some fantastic, like, crazy rides when you were younger, like going through, trying to piece this all together, like all these foundation blocks. I'm guessing you've gone left, you've gone right. I reckon there's been some crazy times coming out of the gate.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of photos out there.
Wow.
Where I've looked at and gone, what on earth? Even now, still to this day.
What don't you like about your riding now?
I don't know, maybe like responsibilities. I feel like I can often be a really reserved, quite, I don't know, stick within my limits. Oh, yeah. Sometimes I wish I didn't have that, but, you know, comes with age.
Yeah.
Responsibilities come with age.
Ain't that the truth? Yeah.
I just, like, the one thing that I'd love to refine would definitely be my starts. I feel like when you're riding a 4-lap race, that start is a solid 60, 70% of the ride. Yep. You know, if you can get that whole shot, damn, it makes it a lot easier.
Oh, yes. Yeah. We'll skip ahead and we'll come back, but we'll talk about starts. We'll go to Bathurst, okay? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're at Bathurst. Some of the starts, I'm guessing you're talking about things like that, hey?
Yeah.
Like where you've really got to work. On a track like that where there is a few different lines, it's possible to work it back, and it's such a long track. I guess it gives you time to work it back, but gee, that must be hard, yeah? You must fume when... Yeah. Okay, tell us about Bathurst Long Track. Tell us about the day. Tell us about the weekend. What goes on in a weekend like that? It's probably one of the bigger events on the calendar, really.
Yeah.
It's insane.
I mean, it's one of those events, it technically means nothing in the sense of it's not a New South Wales title, it's not a Queensland title, it's not an Aussie title, but it is like the biggest event on the calendar. Like, it is sick. Like, I love Bathurst. If I could race Bathurst every day of the week, I'd be there. I love it. That track is awesome. Just you won't get that kind of speed anywhere else. Yep. And for me, I think that's probably the most competitive I've been in the women's and men's at Bathurst. So I guess that's maybe why I enjoy it so much.
Yeah, you were What did it end up being in the 450 men's? Pro 450.
I got a fourth, sixth, and a fifth, and I think that put me in like 25th out of 80 men.
88 people or something. Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
That's hectic.
It's pretty cool. Like, women don't often make the repechage against that many men, and I was one of the only women to make the repechage, so that was cool.
And you look at the Pro 450 lineup.
Yeah.
Like, it's a who's who of Australian motorcycle racing.
Yeah.
It was good. So, and your race as well. Obviously, the women's race was some damn good racing in that.
Yeah.
So
I was blown away. There were so many people that came up after the event and were just like, the women's have stepped it up, and, you know, like, the women's were dicing just as much, if not more, than the men's, which was cool.
It was cool. Tell us about your event. Tell us about how it starts. Like, you change your bike, obviously. You're not running the same gearing that you're running anywhere else.
No.
So you change your bike a bit.
Yep. So gearing is changed a lot.
Yep.
We sort of started out with what we thought was right, and then we ended up going a different way.
Yep.
We geared it originally to take off in third. So basically just third, fourth, that's it.
Wow.
So you want to be able to gear the bike to have no gear changes, because obviously clutch engagement is not momentum. So for us, we wanted to gear the bike for fourth. We started out going from third to fifth. Fifth didn't get me through the turns as much as we wanted.
Yep.
And as the track sort of got slicker, it was easier in fourth. So we sort of went an opposite way with gearing. We took a turn or two off the spring, which just sort of helped. Obviously, with the tighter tracks like Brisbane, you want to put turns on the spring so that you can slide through the corner.
Yep.
Whereas Bathurst, you don't want any sliding. You want a two-wheel track because the corners are so big.
Yep.
You don't need to be drifting as such or sliding. You just want to be two-wheeling through. So that was one of the biggest things I think that helped us, which I don't think a lot of the riders mastered, because my bike, like, I could just get drive everywhere. Every part of that track I had drive. It was really cool.
Yeah. That's great, isn't it? Like, good work. Like, that's, you know.
It just goes to show, like, bike setup.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, one of the guys that we know from Coffs, he was struggling with bike setup, and you could see that because I went past him, and that's not something that would ever normally happen.
Is
like,
that right?
he's never behind me.
Yep.
And I went past him, and Dean sort of did a few things on his bike, and it changed it. But yeah, it just goes to show, like, if you don't have the bike set up, you can't have the pace.
It's not going to be there.
Yeah.
So you get there on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
You see the track. Yeah. Okay, this is going to be pretty fast, everything like that. You get to ride Friday, hey?
Yep. So we did practice. I think we did about 3 sessions of practice on the Friday.
Bike feel good straight away?
No. Like, made a couple of changes, tried to work out the gearing.
So that was all Friday?
That was all Friday. And then Saturday morning we made the final gearing change, because there wasn't really enough time between sessions, and with the sessions being so quick, to try to work out the track. And then again, like, our first session, the track was drenched. Second session, the track was almost dry. So trying to work out, like, is that gearing just not working at the moment because it's wet? Like, is it going to work in the dry? Yeah.
Yep. Pretty cool event.
Yeah. Awesome.
Now, traditionally, at any other track, you're a second gear starter?
Yeah.
So this goes to third, just riding the clutch out, or, like, because you'd have it geared pretty high?
Yeah, just riding the clutch out, but third didn't work for me. Like, we sort of realised, gave it a go first race, gave it a go second race, persevered third race. By the fourth race, I just sort of said to my partner, like, what have I got to lose? Like, at this point, I can't get much worse. Like, I was getting out of the gate mid-pack at best.
Right.
And then playing the catch-up and having to make some pretty ballsy moves in the first turn to make sure that I came out sort of top 3, because if you're not at top 3 in that first turn, it makes for a pretty hard time to catch the lead.
Yep.
So that fourth race, we dropped back to second gear starts, and that was one of my better starts. But again, it still wasn't great. And then by the final race, I think that was my best start, and I popped out in second or third.
Yep.
But yeah, it was good.
Tell me about overtaking on a track like that. Looks like you got multiple different decisions you can make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The corners are so wide, but I feel like because the corner is so wide, being right out on the fence, it looks great. but it's not fast. It's not the fast way around because the track is so wide that you're really not making up any time sitting out on the fence.
Because the distance?
Yeah, just the distance
Sheer
is
distance.
so much longer.
Yep.
Yeah, so like distance from the outside of the fence to the inside would be like 60 metres, I reckon, nearly.
Yep.
That's how big the track is. So I feel like for me, I just tried to stay really low, although it might not have looked spectacular and I wasn't sliding out and it wasn't roost flying everywhere, but it was definitely the fastest way around the track and it showed throughout the day.
Yep.
Able to make passes when the other girls were sort of sitting up towards the fence and I was underneath and able to get good drive.
Tell us about the final.
I knew you were coming up to this.
Well, I've got to. It's the final. You don't start at the final. Sorry.
So throughout the day, I had sort of mixed results.
Yep.
First, seconds, thirds. And it sort of came down to the final race. I don't normally, my mum is usually the score counter lady. She sits there and she's got all the points written down and she knows who's got to get what position overall. And I just kind of get on a ride because the more I think about that, the worse it gets for me.
Okay, yep.
And I didn't really think too much of it. I just thought, oh, yeah, we're going into the final. I'm in a good place for second position. Cool. And my last words I said to everyone in the pit tent before I left was like, I just want to get a win under my belt for this last one because I know I can. Like the whole day I was consumed by nerves. I was vomiting race one. Like it was sort of our first big event away from my little boy and first big event back, I guess, in the sense where we'd sort of sunk some time into things. And the previous year for me, I went without Dean and I hadn't been on the bike. It was my first race back. I had issue after issue. I had no clutch, all sorts of problems. I ended up third. Yeah. So I was just like, I just want to improve year on year sort of thing. And went into the last race and I just said to everyone, I just want to win this one just because then I'll know that I can do it kind of thing. And I went out there. Start was okay. Got around Brioni. Brioni got back around me. I got back around her and Taylor had checked out. She was 20 metres ahead or so. Anyways, I've come around last lap, last turn, and I just gave it everything I had. And I got around Taylor and I was so stoked that I just completely had the biggest brain fart. It's a weird concept. Like Bathurst, any other normal long track, where you start is where you finish.
Yeah.
So the takeoff line is the finish line, whereas Bathurst, there was a finish line sort of a little bit further, and then there was a transponder line even further than that. I mean, no excuse on my part. We were told in riders' briefing I should have known, but I think excitement just took over and little blip of the throttle a bit early and Taylor got back past me. So I sort of came into the pit area and I thought to myself, in my mind I know and it's okay, and everyone's face said it all. I just lost it.
Wow. I
didn't realise and I hadn't point counted, and that was for count back first place for Bathurst and I lost it.
I'll tell you what though, I know I messaged you and I spoke to Dean that night and I was like it was one of the best races.
Yeah.
It was a great race.
It was good.
Like a fantastic race. And you did cross the line first. Yeah. Realistically. You did the right thing.
In the eyes of a lot of people.
You crossed the line first and it's brutal.
Oh, my heart sunk. She went back past me with the number one finger and I'm sitting there thinking.
Oh, really?
What? I'm like.
Taylor did?
Yeah, Taylor went past with the number one finger and I thought, hang on a minute. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm thinking, surely I didn't. And then when I watched back the live stream, I'm like, shit, I really let off early. And I mean, yeah, it happens.
Oh, it happens.
It is what it is. I know what I had and I know what I bring that weekend, and I don't need a trophy to tell me otherwise. So I'm fine with that.
You're riding fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was an exciting race and you crossed the first line first. You did, and everyone on the fence at that time, because Taylor did have that 20 metres or whatever it was, 7 bike lengths or whatever. I thought, okay, that's the position. But when you're spectating there, and you've obviously watched races there, you can't tell who's actually coming out of the corner first.
No, it's really deceiving.
Inside, outside is real deceiving. And I think it is because that width of the track. Yeah. It's very hard to see. And then all of a sudden you come up the straight, it's like, wow, this is unreal. And then I didn't even know, right? And then Dean came out later that night and he's like, oh, that happened. I'm like, Oh, no, that's brutal. It can be
Yeah.
a brutal sport in the nicest possible way.
Yeah.
You know, like that's, it's a tough sport sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keeps you humble.
You going back next year?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say yes, but we just need to see what
Yeah.
happens with this knee and
Yeah.
everything like that. Just need to start getting things better.
So since then, obviously, and you're riding really, really well. Like, you're riding different bikes. You rode that KX500. You've had an incident.
Mm-hmm.
And this was like a nothing, hey?
Yeah, like to me, it was a simple high side, and it was a silly mistake. I got too far out on the fence in a bit of the bull dust and tucked the front in practice of all things. Just
Club day?
Yep, club day, just moseying around. It was a decent high side. I got up, I felt winded more than anything. I had a sore hip, sore knee, sore ankle, but, you know, it's just one of those things. You assess yourself and you're like, oh, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I got back on the bike, remounted and raced the rest of the day. I sort of sat out on some of the boys' races, missed the first girls' race just because we needed to straighten the bike out.
Yep.
Raced the rest of the day, went home. I knew that something wasn't 100%, but I didn't, I still to this day, if I didn't have that medical, you know, list of injuries in front of me, I would sort of say, you're kidding.
Yep.
On the Tuesday, I got up off the couch and just had a bit of instability in my knee. And I thought to myself, I better go and get this checked out. And turned out that I ruptured my ACL, fractured my tibia, and broke my shoulder blade in 2 places. So
I wonder if asking you can walk up the stairs here.
Yeah, but
you're not supposed to be like so mobile. This is the story, you know, like you're not supposed to be like, you walked up here today, how you going?
Yeah.
You know, shake hands. It's like normal.
yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like because I've had 2 knee reconstructions now. This would be the 3rd if we choose to get surgery. I think I'm a little bit immune to knee pain, and I don't know. I think when you've dealt with it for so long, it's just like, it's just another day.
What were your other 2 knee recos from?
Posty GP, unfortunately, has had its fair share of injuries for me. The first year we did it, I broke my tib and fib, and I had a rod put in my tib. I dislocated my shoulder and broke my shoulder blade as well. So I was in a wheelchair for about 16 weeks. That was just before we moved up to the Gold Coast. So a funny story, applying for jobs, and I'm like, how on earth am I going to get a job? I'm in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that this job at LSKD popped up, and I'm like, wow, they're a motorbike brand. Like, surely if anyone's going to understand me rocking up on crutches or in a wheelchair, it's them.
Yep.
And Jason, the founder, as soon as he found out what had happened to me, he had a good old giggle, and I got the job. So that was good.
So that was the start of that relationship with working at LSKD?
Yeah. So
That's pretty cool.
Moved up here, and it wasn't in a good way, and they took me on. He knew the risk. He knew what that meant moving forward, and he sort of helped out with my racing and, understood all the injuries and accidents. But, so that was first Posty GP. And
Can I stop you there?
Yeah.
Who'd you team up with the first year?
First year we were the first women's team. I teamed up with Eilish Ross, who you might know from road racing.
Yep.
She's from down south. So we teamed up and we were the first all-female team. We just missed out on the finals. I think you had to finish top 10. We finished 11th. And it was in the consolation race that I had injured myself. So it was a guy that I'd already gotten past twice, a lapper. Don't know whether he spotted the pink helmet and decided to give it a try, but he tried to duck back underneath me and just completely speared me off the bike. And that was the tib and fib and the shoulder blade gone. So that was a long road to recovery. So we spent about 8 months off the bike, got the rod out, went back, first race back. We raced the 2015 New South Wales titles, and I won it. That was huge for me because it was not even in the realm of possibility for me. I didn't think after having that much time off that I could come back and be competitive.
Yep.
So that was really cool.
Where was that at?
That was at Tamworth.
Yeah, cool. Yep.
Oakburn Park. Yep.
What a great reward after. Well, it's like it is a reward for sitting around for 16 weeks or 20 weeks by that point and torture.
Yeah.
Sitting there watching everyone else race to come back and do that. It must be like, okay, I can do this again. I'm ready. Yeah.
8 months of recovery. I think it might have even sort of made me a bit keener, I guess.
Yeah.
Time off.
Yep.
Yeah, it was really cool because to me, I turned up with no intentions or, I just didn't think it was achievable, a podium, and to come and get the win was cool.
Yeah, it's unreal. Second year, post the GP.
Yeah, so I don't like being defeated. I decided I'd go back and do it again.
Awesome. Get back on the horse. Yeah.
Get back on the horse, and the second year ended almost like the first. Came off and, did my ACL. So didn't leave in the ambulance, luckily. It was just kind of like we knew something had happened. We'd get off and go and get it checked out when we got back up here. But, did my ACL. So that was my first ACL surgery. And then pretty much 12 months to the date. So that was a bigger kind of rehab. We spent 12 months off the bike. I did one event in between, which was a Gemma Wilson ride day. And that was so cool. Yeah. Yep.
Up at Conondale?
No, just at QMP.
QMP one.
Yep.
Yeah, cool.
So that was my first ride back. Just a bit of fun and had a girls' weekend. And then it was only like 2 weeks after that, which would have been exactly 12 months to the date of my surgery, I jumped on an electric skateboard and hit a drain on the road and came off and ruptured it again.
Oh, are you serious?
Yeah. So ruptured it again. I didn't even cry. I literally got up off the skateboard and just sat on the curb, and my partner came back and he said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I've done my knee." And he goes, "You haven't?" And I said, "No, I've done my knee." And he goes, "Are you serious?" And I got back on the skateboard, rode back to the house, sat on the couch, and I just burst into tears because I knew what I was in for. I knew the 12 months recovery. Yeah. I knew I was back off the bike, all this time that I'd spent rehabbing it and waiting and doing everything right.
Amy.
Yeah.
That's
on
brutal.
an electric skateboard, yeah.
Oh, that is like the worst nightmare.
I've never been back on one since.
No, don't. Or a postie bike.
No, or a postie bike. I'm like 3 times a charm. I'm not that stupid.
Yeah. Tell you what, those posties seem to get through life pretty well.
Yeah.
It's just as soon as you try and race the things, it gets a bit difficult.
They're just not designed to do what you're doing. And it seems weird because like I've been on a 450 for so long now, and like realistically this is the biggest injury that I've had on a 450, my recent crash. So to do it on a postie at like a quarter of the speed, it just seems so strange. They're just not designed to be raced the way that you're trying to race them. Like you're jumping curbs and gutters, there's speed humps on the track, there's culverts, like there's potholes. It's just you're scraping pegs, it's chaos.
It's our 110cc version of the Isle of Man.
Literally, yeah.
All the gutters and everything.
It's nuts.
Wow. It must be fun though.
Yeah.
It looks so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a cool event.
Bad part away that you've had, but it looks so good.
Yeah. It's a cool event.
That second one though, that is the most brutal thing to have happen after, especially the program that goes on when you do an ACL. It's not the nicest thing. And what's the conversation with your doctor like? Is it the same doctor? Do you have the same? Do you get like a frequent flyers like, hey, whatever it is, like what goes on?
Almost. The first 2 were the same surgeon.
Yep.
The last one, I was actually recommended by a good friend of ours, Luke Reardon, to go and see Dr. Tudor, and he had a completely different approach.
Yeah, right.
So for me, I went into this one thinking to myself, like, this is it. We're getting another ACL reco, and I know it's ahead of me with a 2-year-old. I was stewing. I'm like, this is going to be tough.
Yeah.
And I walked in, and he was sort of in shock that I was walking, and he's like, okay, well, this is a start. And he sort of do a squat, do this, do that. And he sort of said, look, I'd be more inclined to just not touch it for now. Mm-hmm. It's not something that may have, like it may have to be reconstructed later on down the track if I do continue to get instability. But for now, it was kind of just like, let's take the approach of rehab and strength and see where we can go from here. So for me, that was kind of like a get out of jail free card to keep doing what we do and, not have to do the full 12 months of rehab straight up.
So you're telling me like an ACL is like a spleen?
Yeah.
It's in the body just as a spare.
Not needed.
No.
Doesn't play a huge part.
Wow. No, that's such a nice feeling though to have that where you're not having to go back through surgery, because I'm guessing because they usually take something from another part of your body or something.
Yeah.
like you've had it a couple of times now.
Hamstring.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So that was my next thing. He was like, we sort of talked about all options, and then it was like, okay, Amy, we're getting to a point now where we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. Like, I don't know what we're going to take next. You know, like once you've taken 2 hamstring grafts, I've had one from either side, it's starting to get to other things. Yep. So it's kind of like, and for me, returning to racing, like it's inevitable. It's something that's in my blood. It's something that, even if it's not now and it's not in 5 years, I can't say to myself for the rest of my life that I wouldn't get back on a bike. So the risk is still there. Yep. My little dude's pretty obsessed with bikes. Yeah. So for me, I think in a few years I'll probably be following him around, and the risk is still there. Whilst ever you're on a bike, and the risk of dabbing your knee and re-rupturing it again is pretty high. So to not have to worry about it for now was a better option for me, because if it is getting to the point where I'd have to get donor ACL graft, it starts to become a lot harder. So if I was to kind of get it replaced again and then rupture it, there's even less options. Yep. So yeah. Yeah,
and at this time, it's telling, isn't it? Yeah. Like he's running around like crazy, doing everything. You have 12 months of your mobility taken away from that. It's more than that too.
You do get mobility back reasonably quick, but it's definitely not a pretty 12 months. Like the pain and stuff like that, and the extensive rehab is quite a lot.
Yeah. So you want to be able to run around, do all the things, and obviously ride still. It's such a tricky one. Do you ever wear knee braces?
Yeah. Yep. I wear knee braces and
the whole time.
Yeah. Still rupture them.
Because that's been one of the arguments that's gone on forever and ever as well. You know, but I think
at the speed that we're going,
you can't do much.
You can't, no,
physics are physics.
You can brace things and stuff like that, but that's all a preventative. It's not a cure. It's not going to completely stop things. And I also do feel that with knee braces or neck braces and things like that, there's impact that then happens in other areas.
For sure, yeah.
Especially neck braces. Like how many times do you see people break collarbones, shoulder blades, you know, because of wherever the pressure of the neck brace is. If it's not the neck, it's somewhere else, you know. So I've always worn knee braces. In saying that though, the postie GP, the first time we did the ACL, there was no knee braces because there's leathers.
Yeah.
And then obviously the skateboard, there was no knee brace. This was the first time that I had the knee brace on and ruptured it. And again, I didn't really think that there was anything wrong. I got back up and continued the whole day. So for me, it was a bit of a shock.
Oh, it's a tough one. It's a really, really tough one. Tell me about being, you know, women in motorcycle racing. 14 years you've done this now. Take a couple off injury and things like that, but 14 years. What's changed? You're getting some great grids at races. Some races are not as much. Some races are much. How's it going?
In my years of racing, I must admit not much has changed.
Really?
Sadly.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of women that float in and float out for various different reasons, whether that be, you know, the interest was there because they were with a partner and then they're not with that partner and they don't have that bike knowledge to be able to continue to do it on their own. Pregnancies, kids, children, families, responsibilities, life, injuries. I feel like the women are a lot less likely to come back after injury. There's quite a few that we've had good riders that have had injuries and then decided to not come back. They've been deterred after that. So there's been a lot of floating in and floating out. There's been a lot of women in my time that I've seen come in and go, and new faces and that sort of thing. But in terms of changes to the sport, not many. In terms of equality, not much. Not much has changed, unfortunately. It's a topic that I don't really like to discuss just because it's very head and heart for me. Like I like to, obviously in my heart, I think we deserve to be paid the same as men in the sense of we put the same prep work in, we have the same risk, and all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, I'm very much so in my head about the fact that the grid for women's compared to men's is very different. You know, we might have 6 to 12 women, the men have 40 plus. So for me, it's kind of like, I get it. But it's a bit disappointing. I mean, at Bathurst was one for me that really sucked because there was only two classes on the program that had two sponsors against them. One was the men's 19 class that got paid like $1,600 for the win, and the other was the women's. We got paid the same as the juniors.
Yeah, right.
And we had a full grid, and we put on a hell of a show.
It was a great show.
So that sucked. That stung a little, but
yeah,
we'll get there. There's a long way to go.
I don't know if the right word for is advocate, but I know, like in our conversations, you're very passionate about trying to get people into dirt track, no matter the gender. You just want people to come into dirt track, right?
Yeah.
But you're obviously doing the videos. You had the video with Risky Co. You had some things like that. Are they're good platforms to grow it, hey? Like, obviously it's just a matter of people getting to stick around and enjoy the sport.
Yeah.
But is there a golden way to do it, do you think? Is it coming from a kid and just having it so entrenched that you stay there as a kid and come through? Or is it, I don't know, is it the boyfriend coming to the track like you said and the partner stay? How do you get people to stick in that sport?
I think longevity with the women's is definitely like coming from a junior and progressing through. I think you're going to get someone more inclined to stay because of the passion behind it, because they've done it for so long.
Yep.
I think one of the big barriers that we have with dirt track and women is the fact that most of the girls that do come and try it have started from somewhere, whether that be motocross or enduro. Anyone coming from motocross, it's highly unlikely that a woman would have a 450. So when they do come across, they're on a lower capacity bike.
Yeah.
All the girls that have done dirt track for a long time are all on 450s because it's a pro open class. So to be competitive, you need to be on a 450.
Yep.
So I feel like the girls that come over from motocross, they come in, they dabble in it. If they're not getting immediate results, it's kind of like, okay, I'll go back to what I was doing. And the plunge isn't made to go and get the 450 unless they absolutely love it.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of like a big barrier that we have at the moment.
Yeah, that's true. That really is true because most general riders will go to the 250 for motocross anyway.
Yeah.
You know, like because it's one of those sports that you can do with that. Like 450 would be better, you know, obviously for certain people, but yeah, it is the choice, you know.
I mean, if I was riding motocross, there's no way I'd have a 450. I'd flap off the back of that thing.
And just jump straight off it.
Yeah, like, so I understand from that point of view, yeah.
And then, you know, to go to the 450, there's a lot of fear involved with the 450.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, is it too big? Is it too...
Yeah.
It's time.
And it is a lot.
Time.
Like, I must admit, when we started for the first 2 seasons that we were racing competitively and doing titles, I had a 250.
Yep.
And I loved my 250. It taught me a lot.
Yep.
But I had to make the plunge because if you can't beat them, join them. Like, I didn't have the pace they did. Imagine heading to a track like Bathurst on a 250 against a 450.
You'd destroy it.
Yeah. It would be pointless.
It'd be slow, yeah.
So I had to make that plunge. And the only reason I did that was just sheer passion. Like, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to race dirt track. I didn't have any interest in motocross. So for me, it was a no-brainer.
Yep. That's the bike I want. That's what I'm going to get.
Yeah.
So having Emma, Shelby, April coming out and doing that, was that good fun?
That was cool.
It
was
cool.
really cool. And it was awesome for me because it's been such a long time since being able to completely introduce someone to dirt track that hasn't necessarily had a background in it to watch them fall in love with it.
Yep.
That was cool.
Yeah.
Like, it brought me back to grassroots of like why I fell in love with it, that fun.
Yep.
Just sort of brought me back down a peg, I guess, from racer to just having fun with girls. That was cool.
I think that's what dirt track gives. It gives that. It's just so fun, and I bang on about it all the time. I think it's one of the best sports I think it's probably the best motorcycle sport that there is. You know, it's so easy to get into. For one thing, you're not parking here and riding away from your vehicle into the bush for 5 hours.
Yeah,
your car, everything's there. Medical assistance is there if you know what I mean. It's just such an easy pathway to get into.
Yeah.
There's no jumps getting in the way of good corners or good straight, you know. But they seem to really enjoy it.
Yeah.
And just the ease of just going there, like
Yeah.
Club like North Brizzy, it's very simple.
April was blown away. Like, she was saying to me, "Oh, I don't have the right bike for it." And I'm like, "What do you mean? You have a KTM 250? Like, what do you
Fine.
what do you mean?"
Yep.
And she's like, "No, I don't have the right bike." I'm like, "That's all you need. I'll get you a rim, which you don't have to have. You can still get a 19-inch
For sure.
trials tire."
Yep.
But I sourced them an 18-inch rim and just used my secondhand, like our secondhand tires that we had laying around. And yeah, she was blown away. She was like, "Oh, for some reason, I just thought that you had to have a different bike or a specific bike." I think that's, I don't know whether, maybe there is a lot of women out there that don't realise that the setup that they have is more than enough to just come and try it.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think too, I mean, even for April and Shelby, like for them it was like, "Oh, I can't race, like that's scary." And I'm like, it's no different to what you're doing on a practice day. You're still riding around with the same girls. It's still the same bunch. It's, you know, so there's that barrier of like riding and racing too, I think, that a lot of women get a bit scared of.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't know. It's all the same to me. I've been doing it for so long.
I think that's and that's my exact opinion as well. And I think it is because I've known that since a kid. I think it's the same people. The only thing different is you all start off your clutch at a gate at the same time. But usually, like at a practice day or whatever, it's you're still using the clutch. You're still getting out of the gate.
Yeah.
It's just that barrier. It's a real barrier, and I don't know if it's education. Like, you know, we have RPA days where we can educate now. We have all these things. It's like there's like this little thing they need to do, because it's not just women as well. Like, I've had mates over the years that have come from motocross, and they're like, "Oh, I don't have a bike for it." I'm like, "I'll get you a tyre." Like, you can get a 19-inch tyre. Like,
off the shelf.
You don't have to do anything. It's so easy.
Yeah.
You know. I don't have the bike for it, and it's education. I think it comes down to that, and just wanting to listen as well and be educated. But great job sourcing all that wheels and stuff.
Oh, thank you.
It was a killer. It was so good. It was such a fun day.
Yeah.
It was good.
It was cool.
Now,
and it was good for like the YouTube and that sort of thing to get that exposure. That was cool.
Yeah, for sure. And they do such a good job with it. And I think, like, I know on Emma's behalf, because I talked to Emma a bit, like, genuinely enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Like, genuinely.
She's hooked.
Fast.
she's hook, line and sinker.
And fast.
She's signing up for the titles.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I come home from that day and I said to Crystal and Ferg here, I said, Emma was ripped, because Emma rides the Harleys for Gasoline Alley in Harley Australia. At Dust Hustle and that, I'm like, she was great.
Yeah.
Like, really good too. Like, I hope Emma continues to race. So.
She'll give me a hurry up soon.
Good. When can you race? Like, what's the go?
Yeah, I don't really know. How long's a piece of string?
I don't really know. It's a good answer.
I mean, the surgeon has sort of advised that, I mean, he knows the reality of it. He deals with enough riders to know that if he says 6 months, we're going to get on in 3.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So for him, he was kind of like, see when you're comfortable.
Yep.
He sort of said around the 3 to 6 month mark, he'd be happy.
Yep.
However, I guess it's what I'm able-bodied to do and how much effort I put into the rehab now side of things. So working with physio sort of 2 to 3 times a week at the moment. We'll back that off slowly, and swimming and cycling.
Yep.
And once we can get some strength back in the knee, that's, I guess, when we'll make the plunge and jump back on.
Yep. Now, earlier in the year, we were talking about Aussie Flat Track Nationals, which you got a wee bit of involvement in. You want to do that? Yeah. You want to try and... That's still... pending everything?
Yeah.
That would be
pending everything.
A goal?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
I'd love to get some girls on the grid and do something there.
I'm really excited for it this year. Obviously, we got 6 rounds over 3 weekends. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah. I feel like it's a good thing for the sport. It's the way that we need to start moving.
Yeah.
Like, it's affordability at this point in time. A rear tyre costing about $320 to $350 retail is stinging everyone's wallets. So I feel like controlled tyres, getting onto something like that, and I feel like it's the way forward for the sport.
How many did you go through at Bathurst?
Bathurst being a long track, you only use one edge at a time. So we kind of alternated. We had 2 rims there, and Dino just changed them, used one side, flipped it for the next race, used the other side, flipped it, got a new tyre. Yeah. Obviously, for a big open meeting, you would do that. For a club day, you would just run the same tyre. But even then, a club day, you could literally fry a tyre in one club day.
$320.
$320.
Yep. And this is the argument with the 19s. You'll get through a couple of weekends.
You could get through a good chunk of the race season, yeah, for sure, especially us women, like,
Yep.
you know. And not only the dollar value at the moment, the fact that you can't get them.
Yeah.
like if you've got some in your shed, like, lock them up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like gold bullion, hey?
Literally, everyone's coming for them.
Yeah, it's insane. And, yeah, it's good. But I had to ride trials right now because if you're a trials rider, you can't get a tyre. So,
Yeah.
or you can, but you can't get a certain brand.
And you'd be spewing having to pay.
$300.
Although I hope they last for them, because they certainly don't for us.
Surely
They're getting a whole season out of one of those things.
What's been a good day in dirt track? What's been one of the most rewarding days for you?
Most rewarding day, I'd say, like recently, would be Bathurst.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, I just think, like, I don't know, like overcoming so many injuries and coming back so many times and having what I think was probably the most talented lineup for quite some time. You know, you've got current Australian and previous Australian title holders there. To be able to go out and do what I did really surprised me.
Yep.
You know, like I came into that thinking, oh, you know, I might get a podium at best. Like Brooke made me look silly the year before. Like she was a mile away.
Yep.
And to come out and be in contention and all but win it, yeah, that was huge. And
Yep.
and that was the first year that I had Dean down there. So for him to see it and for us to work together as a team at an event like that, and for me to be able to achieve what I achieved for him too, that was awesome.
Mate, you guys seem like such a good team. You know,
some days.
Yeah, well, days at the track seem all right, and it does. It just in a way of a welcoming team, and it's not just Dean and yourself, Talon. It's the community that you surround with. It's a good group of people.
Yeah.
You know, and I got to Coffs and, you know, travel by myself, do my own thing, and come grab a seat, come do that, like just welcoming community, and it's nice to be around.
That's one thing that I fell in love with at dirt track. There's no separation. You know, most club days at Brizzy, I pit beside Jared Brooke. Like he's the biggest in Australia, and for friends of ours that are motocross riders, they've come and watched and said, are you allowed to just pit beside him? And I'm like, yeah, everyone is. Like, you're welcome. Chuck a tent beside him. I don't care. There's no one's better than anyone else. And that's what we fell in love with. Because, you know, coming from a little bit of motocross, not too much, but a little bit where you see, like, you know, they've got their big RVs and everyone's so spread out, and the challenge is to not talk to anyone, to then turn around and come to dirt track where, you know, as Dean says, set up then socialise. I'm really bad for socialising. I'm off on a tangent. Yeah. He's setting the whole bike up, so sorry. But to be able to go to that where you literally talk to every girl on the grid and have good friendships, I mean, yeah, it's pretty cool.
I think Dean set me up for failure in February or something too.
Why?
So, you know, do you remember the movie Happy Gilmore?
Yes.
There's a thing about the 19th hole. Come meet us on the 19th hole for a drink. It'll be great. So we did the RP88 at North Brizzy. He's like, yep, after this, come have a beer with us. It'll be great. After the nudgy or whatever it is. Yeah, awesome. And I walk in and there's like about 6 people that have been sitting in the same pub since 1970. And they're looking at me and I'm hot and red and sweaty from dirt track. I'm like, I can't see the trailers around. I can't see a van. There's no bikes out the front. I've been 19 holes. All I can think of was Happy Gilmore.
I remember getting in the car and we're on the way home.
It's so hot.
We're all on the way home and we're like, shit. We didn't tell Mick we're not going to the pub. And I rang you and you're like, yeah, I'm here. Where are you guys?
Yeah, like, I've been 19th hold from Happy Gilmore for sure. This is a good prank, but I know it wasn't. But I thought that was well done. Very cool.
Yeah.
What's going on? What else is happening? How's juggling professional life? Being a mum. How's juggling working LSKD? Trying to race bikes. How's the juggle? That's one thing I want to ask too.
Juggle. It is certainly a juggle. Yep. Working and being a mum and trying to do a competitive sport like we do is tough for sure. I feel like just having a good support network is probably the biggest thing. I mean, we don't have my parents or Dean's parents close by, so we kind of do rely on a lot of faces at the track. It's a very big, like, oh shit, I'm going out to the grid, quick. You're looking around like, who can I, holler over to help out? And everyone's so willing to do that. So that's the secret, I guess, is having a good support network for us has been probably the key.
Yep.
Yeah.
Who's been the biggest helper over the years? Obviously, there's a few. You can't put it down to one. Like, obviously, Dad played a big part at the start.
Yeah.
Gave you that TE that was torture. But who's been that? Obviously, you met Dean pretty early, obviously, into the racing thing.
Yeah.
I guess there's a few faces in there.
That's quite a lot, to be honest. I mean, obviously, Dean would be the biggest person.
Yep.
But outside of that, and I guess it's that person that sometimes you don't want to listen to what Dean has to say. It's a bit like a dad figure. You're like, I don't want to listen to what you have to say.
Wow. Yep.
Whereas when it comes from someone else, you can't just sit there and say, well, I don't care what you think. You've got to absorb it and reflect on it. I think that person for me has definitely been Andrew Brook. He played a massive part in, like, I guess, shaping and teaching us a lot about bike setup and sort of instilling that bit of confidence, because I feel like that's something that I've always lacked, is like this confidence that I can do it.
Yep.
So I think having, Dean and Andrew in my corner have probably been two massive influences for me of late.
Yep.
Obviously, in the beginning, the early days, Dad was that person for me. But again, Dad didn't really have a lot of idea about bike setup and things like that. It was kind of go to the track, and he had such a big part to play in the club with helping out on day-to-day and being the club president or running the canteen or whatever, that often it was kind of like you get to the track and it's fend for yourself time.
Wow.
So as a kid growing up, it was kind of like he might catch glimpses of my races, but he wasn't necessarily that guy on the grid for me. He wasn't necessarily sweeping the gate. He wasn't necessarily setting my blocks up.
Yep.
It was kind of in the early days you had to do that yourself, and then when Dean came along, that was that help for me.
Yep.
So I do genuinely believe if it weren't for Dean, I probably would have fell out of the sport.
Wow.
Just all the injuries and all the things, and not having that help and consistency and that person that had so much knowledge at their fingertips, maybe things wouldn't have went as well for me.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Nice way to end it. It's been cool. Thank you for making your time to come in.
No, thank you so much.
It's been interesting listening to the different places. I'm sure we've crossed paths in many different tracks and things over the years, and obviously the Bayless Classics and things like that. And I'm really excited to see what you do, when you do come back on the bike, because leading up to where you are now with the injury, it was real good. It was a real good time. So I'm excited to see where that comes, and the years of being mum and dad, Dean and yourself. It's really cool. And no more pranks on me when we come to the track.
We will get that pub feed one day.
That'd be great. But thank you for coming in, hey?
No, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
That's all we have time for on today's show. If you get the chance, head over to YouTube and hit subscribe on the Talk and Chatter page. Also, head over to iTunes and give us a star rating and a review there. It all helps to get the podcast out there. A big thank you goes to everyone that's been doing this already, and we'll be back with another show soon.